Have you ever felt it? The quiet ache that tells you something is wrong, even when everything looks fine on the surface. This is not the drama of slammed doors or endless arguments. It is something far more subtle, almost invisible. It's the moment when your heart begins to whisper a truth your mind doesn't want to hear. You are no longer being met where you are. The number one sign it's time to break up isn't a single argument, a betrayal, or a sudden explosion. It is the slow, steady erosion of your soul. It's when you catch yourself holding back your truth because you know it won't be received. When you edit your own feelings before speaking because you've learned that your needs will either be dismissed or ignored. At first, you may not notice. You convince yourself it's just a phase, that things will get better with time, effort, or patience. You compromise again. You soften again. You wait a little longer. But deep inside, a part of you knows, real love does not feel like waiting in silence for scraps of attention. Real love does not make you question your worth. This invisible alarm shows itself in small ways. You no longer feel excited to share good news with them. Their presence feels heavy instead of comforting. Your laughter doesn't flow as easily. And when you imagine the future, you don't see light. You see more of the same waiting, more of the same aching. This is the sign that matters most, when your relationship demands more of your spirit than it nourishes. When you find yourself giving and giving, yet feeling emptier each time. That emptiness is not weakness. It is truth speaking through you, urging you to pay attention. The scariest part is that no one else can see it. To the outside world, you may look like a normal couple, but inside, you carry the quiet grief of a love that no longer holds you. And that is the moment you must begin to ask yourself, how long can I live like this? The sign doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in silence. One day you wake up and realize that the person lying next to you feels more like a stranger than a partner. They may still be there physically, but emotionally, you are carrying the relationship on your own. You notice it when conversations grow shorter or when your words float into the air unanswered. You notice it when you stop expecting comfort after a hard day because you already know it won't come. You notice it when the laughter you once shared has been replaced by polite nods, or worse, by nothing at all. The loneliness that lives inside a relationship is far heavier than the loneliness of being single. When you are alone by yourself, at least there is honesty. But when you are alone next to someone who promised to love you, it feels like a betrayal you cannot name. The number one sign it's time to break up is when your presence is not honored. When your needs feel like burdens. When your joy feels unseen. When your pain feels unwelcome. It is not the absence of romance that hurts the most. It is the absence of recognition. Many people stay in this stage for years, convincing themselves that this is just what long-term love looks like. They tell themselves, all couples lose the spark. This is normal. But deep down, they know there is a difference between love evolving and love disappearing. True love may change form over time, but it never leaves you feeling like you are invisible. The moment you realize you are alone together is the moment life asks you to make a choice. Do you keep shrinking yourself to fit into the hollow shell of what once was? Or do you choose to step into the unknown, where loneliness is honest, but at least it leaves room for new beginnings? It is not easy. It is never easy. But the truth is clear. If your relationship feels like a place where your soul keeps starving, then your heart is already halfway out the door. When love fades but the bond lingers, people often choose to stay. They stay for comfort, for routine, for fear of change. They stay because starting over feels unbearable, or because they believe leaving would mean failure. But what they rarely admit is that staying too long costs more than leaving ever could. The cost shows up first in small ways. You stop laughing as much. You stop sharing the little joys of your day. You stop dreaming together. Instead, you live parallel lives under the same roof, passing by one another like ghosts. Then the cost deepens. You begin doubting yourself. Maybe you're asking for too much. Maybe love really is supposed to feel this empty. You silence your needs, telling yourself that peace is better than conflict. You convince yourself that being tolerated is the same as being loved. But inside, your soul is paying the price. Every time you swallow your truth, you lose a piece of yourself. Every time you accept crumbs, you teach yourself that a feast is too much to ask for. Every time you stay in a love that no longer feeds you, you are abandoning the most important relationship of all, the one you have with yourself. The hardest part is realizing that the longer you stay, the more you become a stranger to yourself. The dreams you once carried start to feel distant. The light you once radiated dims. You wake up and wonder where your joy went, only to realize you gave it away slowly, piece by piece, just to keep something that was already gone. This is why the number one sign matters so deeply. Because when a relationship no longer nourishes you, staying doesn't just delay the inevitable. It steals years that could have been lived fully, authentically, joyfully. The truth is painful, but also freeing. Leaving may break your heart for a time, but staying will break your spirit forever. And once your spirit is broken, it takes years to remember who you are again. There comes a day when the silence inside becomes too loud to ignore. A day when the ache of staying begins to outweigh the fear of leaving. This is the turning point, the quiet awakening that changes everything. It does not arrive with drama. It does not come with shouting or slamming doors. Instead, it slips in like a whisper, a steady truth that settles in your chest. I cannot live like this anymore. You may notice it in the middle of an ordinary moment. Maybe you are cooking dinner, folding laundry, or lying awake at night staring at the ceiling. Suddenly, the thought arrives, clear and undeniable. This isn't love anymore, and no amount of patience will make it become what you deserve. The awakening is not about anger. It is not about blame. It is about clarity. It is about seeing the gap between the love you long for and the love you are living, and finally realizing that gap will not close. In this moment, many people feel torn. One part of them wants to cling to what is familiar, because even unhappiness feels safer than the unknown. But another part, the deeper, wiser part, knows that survival is not the same as living. That love should not drain you. That choosing yourself is not selfish, but necessary. The turning point is when you stop asking, "How much more can I take?" and begin asking, "What do I truly deserve?" And the answer is simple. You deserve love that feels like home, not like exile. This shift does not mean you stop caring for the other person. In fact, it often comes with compassion for them and for yourself. But it also comes with a new kind of strength, a knowing that your life cannot be built on waiting, silence, and compromise that cuts into your soul. The awakening does not tell you exactly how to leave, or when, or what will happen next, but it does give you the courage to face the truth. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That truth will carry you forward, even when your heart still trembles. After the awakening comes the struggle. The heart knows it cannot stay, but the mind clings to what is familiar. Fear whispers louder than ever. What if you never find love again? What if you regret leaving? What if you're too broken to start over? This is the stage where many people turn back. They convince themselves that maybe things aren't so bad, that maybe with more effort, more patience, more sacrifice, the relationship will shift. They ignore their inner knowing and return to the comfort of routine, even if that routine slowly destroys them. But the truth is simple. Fear is not love. Fear is the voice that keeps people trapped in lives that no longer fit them. It paints pictures of loneliness, failure, and regret to convince you that staying in pain is safer than risking change. Yet deep inside, there is another voice, the quiet, steady voice of freedom. It does not shout, but it persists. It tells you that you were not born to beg for affection. It reminds you that you are allowed to want joy, connection, and peace. It calls you to remember that your soul is worth more than endless waiting. In this battle between fear and freedom, something powerful begins to happen. Each time you imagine leaving, the weight on your chest feels a little lighter. Each time you consider staying, the heaviness grows. This contrast becomes the map, guiding you toward the life that will set you free. The number one sign it's time to break up is not just about noticing the emptiness. It's about listening to what happens when you imagine a future without it. If the thought of leaving scares you but also makes you breathe easier, then freedom is already waiting for you. This stage is painful because it requires courage. But courage does not mean the absence of fear. Courage means choosing freedom even while fear trembles inside you. And when you choose freedom, you begin to reclaim your life. Not all at once, but step by step, with each decision that honors your worth. One of the hardest truths to accept is that ending a relationship does not mean you failed. It means you finally honored yourself. For so long, many carry the belief that love must be held together at any cost. That leaving means they were not strong enough, patient enough, or devoted enough. But the real failure is not in walking away. The real failure is in abandoning yourself just to hold on to someone else. Letting go is not rejection. It is recognition. It is recognizing that love cannot thrive where your soul is starving. It is understanding that two people can care for each other and still not be right for one another. It is realizing that staying loyal to pain is not loyalty at all. It is self-betrayal. When someone finally reaches this clarity, a shift takes place. The tears may still fall. The memories may still ache. But beneath the grief, there is a new foundation being built. A foundation of self-respect. Letting go does not erase the love that once was. It does not deny the joy, the lessons, the growth you shared. It simply acknowledges that the season has ended, that what once fit no longer does, that holding on now causes more harm than release ever could. This truth can feel devastating at first. The heart mourns what is lost. The mind struggles with the what-ifs. But with time, something softer begins to emerge. You start to see that letting go made space. Space for healing, space for rediscovering yourself, space for love that actually meets you. Breaking up is not the end of your story. It is the turning of a page. It is the closing of a chapter that no longer serves you, so a new one can be written. And though fear will tell you that nothing lies ahead but loneliness, freedom will whisper that what lies ahead is everything you thought you could never have. Letting go is not failure. It is courage. And courage is the first step toward the life you've been waiting for. The day you finally let go is not the day all the pain disappears. It is the day the healing begins. At first, it may not feel like healing at all. It feels like grief, like emptiness, like wandering through the ruins of something you once believed would last forever. You may cry for the version of love you imagined, not just for the person you left behind. Healing begins quietly. It shows up in small ways. A morning where your chest feels lighter, an evening where you laugh without forcing it, a night where you sleep peacefully instead of replaying old arguments in your head. It is not a straight line. Some days you will feel strong, and other days the memories will pull you under again. But even in those moments, you are still moving forward. The truth is, healing is not about erasing the past. It is about integrating it. It is about taking the lessons, the pain, and the growth, and allowing them to shape you into someone wiser, stronger, and more alive. The love you gave was not wasted, even if it wasn't received the way it should have been. It was proof of your capacity to care, to commit, to believe. That capacity is still yours. Over time, you begin to notice something powerful. The energy you once spent trying to keep the relationship alive is now being poured back into yourself. The care you once extended outward now flows inward. And slowly, piece by piece, you begin to remember who you are outside of that relationship. This is the sacred part of the journey. Because when you stop waiting for someone else to see your worth, you start seeing it yourself. When you stop giving all your love away, you begin to feel what it's like to hold it. And when you stop fighting to be understood, you realize you no longer need to fight. You only need to live in your truth. Healing does not mean you forget them. It means you remember yourself. And that remembrance becomes the foundation for the life that is waiting to unfold. As the dust of heartbreak begins to settle, something new and unexpected emerges: self-worth. At first, it comes in fragile whispers. You catch yourself saying no to things that once drained you. You feel less willing to tolerate half-hearted love, less eager to explain yourself to those who never listen. You begin to realize that choosing yourself is not selfish. It is survival. It is strength. It is sacred. This shift is not loud. It does not demand attention. It moves quietly, like roots growing beneath the soil, steady and unstoppable. Each day you remember a little more of who you were before the relationship dulled your shine. You recall your passions, your dreams, the parts of yourself you once set aside to keep the peace. Slowly, you gather them back. Self-worth changes everything. Where once you settled for crumbs, you now know you deserve the feast. Where once you begged for attention, you now expect respect. Where once you twisted yourself to be loved, you now stand in your truth and let love rise to meet you. This rise does not erase the pain of what you left behind, but it transforms it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every ache in your chest becomes the soil from which new strength grows. The heartbreak becomes a teacher, and the lesson is clear. Never again will you betray yourself for the sake of being chosen. And then, something even more profound happens. As your self-worth deepens, your energy shifts. People notice. Opportunities flow in. Relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or professional, begin to reflect the love you now give yourself. The world responds to the vibration you carry, and when your vibration is rooted in self-respect, what comes to you is aligned, steady, and real. The number one sign it's time to break up is not the end of the story. It is the doorway. On the other side of heartbreak lies a life where you no longer beg to be seen, because you already see yourself. After the storm of heartbreak, there comes a day when the sky feels lighter. It doesn't happen suddenly. It sneaks in quietly, almost without you noticing. Maybe you catch yourself smiling at something small, like sunlight breaking through the window, or a song that once carried pain but now makes you hum along. That's when you realize hope has returned. Hope doesn't come as a grand promise. It comes as little sparks. The excitement of making plans for yourself, the freedom of choosing without compromise, the joy of rediscovering who you are outside of someone else's shadow. For so long, your life revolved around holding on. Now, it begins to revolve around becoming. Possibilities open in every direction. You begin to imagine a future that isn't defined by waiting, silence, or disappointment. Instead, you see doors you never thought existed. Friendships deepen, passions reignite, and slowly, you begin to trust that love, the kind that is true, mutual, and nourishing, can and will come again. This hope is not about replacing what you lost. It is about realizing that loss cleared space for something greater. The relationship that ended was not a waste. It was a chapter. It taught you what you cannot accept, what you will no longer tolerate, and what you truly deserve. Without that lesson, you would not be standing here now, ready for something real. The return of hope is not naive. It is not about pretending the pain never happened. It is about carrying the pain with wisdom, letting it sharpen your clarity instead of harden your heart. You know now that love must be mutual, that presence must be real, and that silence cannot be the language of connection. When hope returns, it does not promise that the journey ahead will be perfect. It simply promises that it will be alive. And aliveness is what your soul was craving all along. The number one sign it's time to break up is not about drama, betrayal, or explosive endings. It is about truth. The truth that love should not feel like silence. The truth that your needs should not feel like burdens. The truth that being alone together is not love. It is a slow erosion of the soul. When you recognize this sign, you stand at a crossroads. One path asks you to keep shrinking, to keep giving, to keep silencing yourself just to preserve something that no longer preserves you. The other path asks you to let go, to step into the unknown, to choose yourself even when your voice shakes. Walking away is not abandonment. It is alignment. It is saying, my spirit matters, my voice matters, my joy matters. It is understanding that the greatest love you will ever experience is not in someone else's arms. It is in the way you learn to hold yourself. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it leaves scars. But in time, you will see that heartbreak was never the end. It was the invitation to heal, to rise, to return to the person you were before you learned to accept less than you deserved. The number one sign it's time to break up is when the relationship demands your silence. And the greatest act of courage is to answer that silence with truth. To step away, not in anger, but in remembrance of who you are. And when you do, something miraculous happens. You discover that you were never broken, only buried. You find that the love you were chasing outside of yourself was always inside you. And from that place of wholeness, the future opens wide, filled with love, not born of fear or compromise, but of truth, respect, and freedom. The end of one story becomes the beginning of another. And this time, the story is not about waiting to be chosen. It is about finally choosing yourself. If these words touched your heart, know that you are not alone. Thousands of others are walking this path of remembrance and healing with you. By subscribing to this channel, you become part of a community built on truth, self-worth, and hope. If this message resonated, give it a like. It helps this story reach more souls who need to hear it. Share it with someone you care about, someone who may be holding on in silence. And don't forget to subscribe for more guidance, more encouragement, and more reminders that you are never walking alone. Your story matters. Your healing matters. And your future, bright, free, and whole, is already waiting for you. Like, share, subscribe. Let's rise together.